Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Huzur says that the promised Messiah والسلام, in his book Kashti-e-Nu, the Nuh Hazark, that Allah wishes that there should be an outright revolution happening in your lives, and he requires from you a sort of death, after which he is going to give you the life. And and he said that you better make truce between you as early as possible and forgive the sins of your brother, because that person is very vicious who is not ready to make a truce with his father, with his fellow beings, because he will be cut off, because he creates the disorder. And he said that your selfish ego, from every aspect, you leave it there and forgive the unpleasant feelings. And being the truthful, you submit as you are not like that. And you leave aside the rigidity of the self, because that door for which you have been invited to come in, a person who is very rigid and adamant will not be able to enter. The most honored among you is that who forgives the sins of his brother. This extract in various speeches and darses, mostly this is presented to the members of the Jamaat. And despite being truthful, to show the modesty, just like a person who is not telling the truth, that is a phrase which most of the Ahmadis who present the reference of that in various occasions and sometime giving the details of their own matters, they write to me and they write to me that they adopted this way. But the other party, he is very unjust in his treatment to us. In the last sermon, with reference to the disputes with the Qaza and others, I mentioned certain points. Hadhrat Massih Maud, this wording of him, when he has included this in his teaching, this is actually the expectation that he has from his followers. And this is also speaking the anguish that he has in heart regarding the members of the community. If a person reads all the passage of our teaching in the book, then, as I said, that these few words, these words are brought to our notice again and again. But still, some of the people are there among us who in order to make a truce and peace and the hand of peace which is extended to them, they are always rejecting that. As I said, some people say that always they say that we are showing our modesty and we are ready to accept every condition for truce and making peace between us. But the other person is adopting the attitude of injustice. If in reality the other party is like that, as they say, so then they should leave their matter in the hand of God. Hadhrat Massih Maud has said that that person will be cut off. And he also mentioned that very wretched or unjust is that person who is not ready to make a peace. So those people who come into this category, it is a great warning for those people. They should be fully warned about that. On one side, by entering into the initiation at the hand of the promised Messiah, they make this covenant that we are not going to indulge in any sort of a disorder and we will abandon the selfish egos. And then they deny the truce between them. So then this is putting them at distance from the covenant of the initiation. It is not fulfilling that. Hadhrat Promised Messiah said on one occasion that our community should be such that they should not be simply sticking to words, and they should not be proving their being Ahmadi only by words. But he said that the real import of the initiation, that has to be fulfilled. He said an internal change has to be brought about just by the doctrines and arguments. You cannot please your God if internal change is not there. So then among you, in you and your other people, opponents, there is no difference at all. So the Promised Messiah made it very clear that without fulfilling the real import of the initiation, Allah Almighty cannot be pleased. And in order to please Allah Almighty, the discharge of the rights of other people and the making truce between them and peace, that is very essential. Describing his own condition and emphasizing this point once again, to show that how much magnanimous he was in forgiving other people. Regarding himself, he says that I swear in the name of Allah that if somebody who has called me Dajjal and Kazab, the liar, thousands of times, and he has done effort against me many a time, and then he comes and wants to make it a peace with me, so then I never ever think, and this idea cannot come into my mind, that what this person has told me and what sort of treatment he has given to me. And then advising us, he has said that my advice is this much, that remember two things. One, have the fear of Allah, and secondly, and be so kind to your brothers just as you are kind to your own self. What you wish for yourself and whatever you desire for them, or you think that the other people should be kind to you, the same sort of treatment you have to give to your brothers. And he said, if somebody makes a mistake or some injustice is done, so then you have to forgive that, and not that you highlight that thing and have this rancor and enmity against him in your heart. So therefore, we always have to keep this point in mind, that in this world today, where everywhere and every time the condition of disorder and unpleasant thing is there, so we who consider and we describe that we have come into the initiation of the Promised Messiah, and we have come into a fort, and we express our gratitude to Allah Almighty that Allah Almighty has protected us from the condition of the disorder as we find in the world today. The fact of the matter is that we can only be protected at a time when at all times we have this feeling that in justified matters and whenever we happen to deal with other people, we always adopt the course of gentleness, and we have to lay the foundation of peace and agreement. Otherwise our statements would be simply the slogans, and our claim would be simply a claim that by joining the community of the Promised Messiah we have got some benefit. This claim can be there, but it won't be a reality. The benefit will come only at a time when among the good morals, each and everything would be there showing us its glamour. The kindness to mankind and peace between people, this is such a good manner regarding following which the Hadhrat Promised Messiah ﷺ has admonished again and again, and every Ahmadi should pay attention to this. And there are some other quotations are there in writings, in his books. He has mentioned the same point again and again. In Hadith it is mentioned, The Holy Prophet ﷺ has said that a stalwart and a champion is not that person who overpowers the other person. Really, stalwart is that who keeps his self under control in anger. And the mu'min should always be exhibiting this type of character. When he is angry, one should have the control over oneself. And this non-believers, they cannot act upon this thing, because this thing is a matter of surprise for them. This incident regarding Hadhrat Ali is well known, when he overpowered his enemy and he sat on his chest, and just he was about to kill him, that person spat in his face, and he immediately left that man. And he said that he was asked that, why have you left me in this condition? And he said that the reason is that first I was because you were fighting against Islam, I was ready to kill you, but now you have spat in my face, and my person has come into this matter and anger, and for my own sake I don't want to kill anybody. So this is the high standards which we see there in the history, which has been presented and made by our elders. So this is the quality of the mu'min, that he should suppress his anger and should always be ready for truce. But the non-believers, they cannot do it at all. And this is the beauty of the belief of the believer, which Hadhrat promised Messiah wanted to create among us, so that from each and every action of us, the true teaching of Islam should be exhibited. That teaching of Islam should be exhibited, which is based on forgiveness and ignoring the faults of other people. On one occasion, in a meeting, the promised Messiah ﷺ said, which is also the explanation of this hadith, that in our community, we don't need such stalwarts and wrestlers in our community. And we need that such people are needed in our community. Those who are striving in order to change their morals, and they always reform their morals and take it to the highest point. And this is the fact of the matter. He said that really that person is not a wrestler who can remove the mountain from its place. He said really the most courageous person is that who is able to and who is competent to change his morals, and he has the power to make his morals better and better. So he says, remember that all the effort should be spent in changing your character, and because this is actually the boldness and chivalry. So this should be our objective. And then on one occasion, in a meeting, the promised Messiah ﷺ said that I feel that every person who leaves his bad morals and abandoning the foul manners, then he adopts the good manners, he abandons the bad habits and morals, and acquires, and the good qualities he acquires, he tries to acquire that. He said, this is actually a great thing in him. And when he leaves the bad things and gets the good one, that is like a miracle. And to acquire the good morals, this is a great sign for the people. Some people say, what is the change? What is the change that you felt after the coming into the Bai'at? So the meaning is that when you come into the initiation, then you acquire the good morals. And if there is, if a person leaves these habits of anger and displeasure and get the generosity, and instead of jealousy he gets the quality of kindness to people, that is really this reformation, and he abandons the bad things and acquires the good things, and he abandons the anger and the modesty and the forgiveness acquires, and he abandoned the miserliness and acquires the generosity, and he gets the good feelings about other people. This is a kramat. This is a great revolution that happens to take place in you. And when a person acquires the modesty, that is actually a miracle. And who is among you who does not like to be a person of miracles? He said, I know that everyone desires this. So this is a permanent thing. If there is a permanent miracle, then this is the permanent miracle that should be there, and this is the change which you have to create in yourself. That you abandon the bad things and bad habits and acquire the good morals. And said that a person should reform his character, because the impact of that is never goes away, but the benefit of that goes to a long way in the life. A mu'min should always do that. A person should become a good morals in the sight of God, and also you should be a person of good morals in the sight of other people. So it means that you are discharging the rights towards Allah and also the rights towards fellow being. There are such people who are just lost in the worldly entertainment, but they sometimes reform their thing. There are people who are criminals and killers, and but after they did not change themselves by looking at the miracles, but looking at the moral of other people, they submitted to that, and they also brought about a change in them. And they could not find any other way except doing this. So in the history of so many people, you will find that when they looked at this karamat, this miracle in the life of the people. So that occasion when the promised Messiah was mentioning these things, at that time there was a practical demonstration of that. It happened through him. I have already mentioned earlier on. At that time there were some sick people. They sat in the meeting and they talking ill and calling names and abuses, and they started talking like that. They were sitting in the mosque in the meeting of the promised Messiah, but the promised Messiah did not say, and he kept quiet. At that, the feeling of all the people is that this is a practical demonstration of the high morals. While it was his own place, it was his meeting, Ahmadis were there sitting, but he did not permit anybody to say anything. And whatever they wanted, these people, sick people, they said and used the foul language, and then they went back, or maybe the police might have captured them later on. So this is the high moral, the example of high morals, and he demonstrated this, and this is the noble example that he showed at that time. So he says that unless this a seed of arrogance does not go out from the mind of the person, he does not really believe in the unity of Allah. The promised Messiah says the fact of the matter is that except from the mercy of Allah Almighty and His favor, these bad seeds and worms, they cannot be taken from the mind of the person. So therefore one should try to get the blessing of Allah. So these are very small worms, and the greatest harm is given by these worms. Those who are affected by these bad qualities, and then they go out of the limitations of God and the messenger, and they destroy the rights of the mankind, the other people. They are not people who are not such, who are uneducated, but many of them are scholars, and they have done the Maulvi Fazil degrees, and maybe some people are known as great scholars, but sometimes they are just suffering from this sort of disease. It is not the job of ignorant people that they do not discharge the rights towards Allah, or when the opportunity comes they usurp the rights of other people. But he said that very many educated people are such. Even sometimes the ulama, the scholars, and even more than that, those who are well versed in matters of religion, and they are known to be as great scholar and Sufis, mystics in the world. Even these people are suffering from this type of disease. When the occasion comes, they forget all these things. They don't remember God Almighty, nor they are paying any attention to the discharge of duties towards well-being. So these are the statues. They have to abandon that and to recognize them and leave them away. That is the piety. And sometimes if they don't do like that, there is a lot of killing and bloodshed is there. If somebody usurps the rights of the other people, so many vices come after that because of this thing. And he says these things take place all the time, every time. And the people are depending on their means so much that God Almighty is taken to be as something useless. And there are very few people who have understood the meaning of Tawheed. And whenever they are told, they simply say that, are we not Muslims? So don't we recite the kalima? But the effect is, it is the very sorry thing that they just declared the kalima from their tongue. The real purpose of the unity of Allah, they did not understand. They just think that saying La ilaha illallah is good enough, and they do not have the concept of unity in them. If a person is really aware of the real meaning of the kalima tayyiba, and practically he is following the message contained in that, then he can make a lot of progress. And most wonderful manifestation of divine attributes he will be able to see. And remember this thing, he says, that I have this position. I am not standing as an ordinary preacher, and I am not standing here to tell you the stories. But I have come here, and I am standing here to express that witness, and that message which Allah Almighty has conveyed to me, I have to convey that. He said, I don't care this thing, whether a person listens to it or not, whether he believes it or not. That answer will be given by you. I have to discharge my responsibility, and I know that many people, those who are in my community, they declare the unity of Allah. But I say with great sorrow, but they really do not believe. The person who usurps the rights of his brother, or who cheats, or he does not desist from other types of foul things, that I cannot say that he is truly a believer of the unity of Allah. He says that in order to believe God Almighty is one, it is essential that no denial of the human rights should be there. And the person who does not do so, he is not the one really believer in that kalima la ilaha illallah. If the rights of the fellow beings are usurped and they are not honest in that matter, this is such a thing, the unity of Allah, that there is a very extraordinary change in the person. If you understand the meaning of the la ilaha illallah, so then an extraordinary change will be there in you. And he said, the enmity, hatred, jealousy, and show off, all these statues, they are no more there. And the nearness of Allah Almighty is attained by the person. This change comes only at a time, and only the person becomes true believer in God, one God, when these inner statues and the jealousy of and hatred and jealousy and other things and duality and breaking the promise and all these things are totally smashed away and thrown away. If you have to believe in one God, in the unity of Allah, then you have to leave the arrogance and selfish ego and show off and rancor and enmity. If somebody comes to seeks forgiveness and wants to make a agreement and peace, so those things should be forgotten, and you have to go for these good qualities. The miserliness, this quality has also to be abandoned, and this hypocrisy and duality of character, that has to be abandoned. So if you leave all these things, only then you can become the true believer, and then you can understand the real meaning of La ilaha illallah. And he says, unless these statues are inside, how can you be true in declaring these words? Because in his character there is the negation of depending upon Allah Almighty. So it is very certain that if you simply declare through your tongue that you believe Allah as one, and if you pronounce the kalima verbally, and if there is anything wrong there, then he makes this anger as his God. So the gist of all this thing is that from inside the person, this worm of a selfish ego should be taken away. And the true concept of Allah Almighty cannot be there unless a person has got the real understanding of the kalima La ilaha illallah. In order to become a person in the believer in the unity, you have to believe Allah Almighty as omnipotent, and He is the only God to be worshipped, and Allah Almighty is the master of all the powers, and He is the real God to be worshipped. So then, through worldly ways and excuses and various methods, a person cannot usurp the right of other people by any means. So the person who does not discharge the duties of his fellow beings, and he does not go for the establishing truce and agreement, he is actually not the believer in the unity of Allah. This is, in a nutshell, the summary of what he has said. This is such a point that if you understand it properly, so then all of us, we will be laying the foundation of peace, and we will be able to decide the rights of other people. So therefore, each one of us, they have to understand this subject, and they have to evaluate and analyze oneself. Otherwise, this is a point of great concern for us. They declare through their word of mouth the unity of Allah, but practically they deny that. Hadhrat promised Messiah ﷺ, in his book, Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam, he has mentioned the examples of abandoning the shirk, the setting up of partners with Allah. And one thing which he mentioned is that how can you negate the bad things, and there are various ways of doing that. And one of them is that not to give any physical harm to other people, and should be a person without any harm, and one should be ready for establishing peace. This is one way of abandoning the mischief, to lead a life in which there is no sort of injustice in the life, and not to harm anybody. Rather, thoroughly one should be without any harm and lay the foundation of peace, and to live the life like that, and to increase mutual love and affection. This is very essential. He further says that regarding this, undoubtedly, the peace, the quality of establishing peace is a great quality, and it is utmost necessary for the people. And according to this quality, this quality is attained by adopting the good things, and it means that a man, through his natural course of way, one cannot understand the subject of peace, and not he can understand the subject of fighting with other people or getting into war. A person, this quality, this moral, this is generally in children, because it is the natural result, and they are always ready for making a truce and peace. And the children, they forget their conflict very quickly and always go for reconciliation. And he says that if a person a person can understand this natural condition only at that time. If a person is bereft of wisdom, then the subject of peace cannot be understood by him. And similarly, he cannot understand the meaning of fighting, and in what condition he has to go for peace and in what condition he has to fight. So at this time, this condition which is found in there, that is the root of the establishing peace. And if this thing is not adopted with firm commitment, then it is not really the thing. And this will become immoral only at that time when one makes oneself as a harmless person and uses this quality of peace at its appropriate time. If the person does not have the power or the ability, or it is a condition of one like a child, then it is not a very good high moral. The high good moral will be there when analysis of all the situation in front of you is there, and a person does his best and efforts, and then he lays the foundation of peace and uses this quality at its appropriate time. Or in some countries or in nations, sometimes there is a situation of fighting. There sometimes they have to make certain decisions. But the decisions should not be away from justice or intellect. Rather, appropriate decisions according to the situation should be taken. And the foundation of the peace can also be laid there at the right time. If it is done like that, then it is a good moral. He says that if a person, when a person acquires this habit at its appropriate time and becoming a harmless person and does not do anything which is doubtful, then Allah the Almighty says, "Waslehu zata bainakum, waslehu zata bainakum," that you establish peace between you. Wasulhu khair, this truce is much better. Wa in janahu lisalme fajna laha, and if they incline towards making peace, so then you also be inclined to that. If the enemies want to make a truce and pact of peace, if they are inclined to that, so then you establish peace between them. وَإِن جَنَاهُ لِلسَّلْمِ فَجْنَا لَهَا. And then Allah Almighty says, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. And the servant of the gracious Allah are those who walk on the earth with utmost humility and meekness. And Allah Almighty, وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِاللَّغْوِ مَرُّوا كِرَامًا. And when they pass by vain things, then they just go away with dignity. And he has quoted this part of the verse as well. idfa billati hiya ahsan fa izallazi bainaka wa bainahu adawatun kannahu waliyyun hamim. That you defend with such a thing which is the best one. And then the person between you and him is enmity. If you do it in a nice way, then you will become very close friends. And he says that adopt the course of peace. Peace is good, and when they are inclined to the peace, then truce, you do it. And the servants of gracious God, we walk on the earth peacefully. And these are the people who, when they come across anything bad, they just take the side and go away. If they hear something vain and useless thing, and there is a fear of any fight there, then at that time they avoid that and go away. And in a very dignified way, they go away from that situation. And they say that they don't start fighting on petty things. Unless they are really injured and severely affected, they don't like to fight back. And for the peace, this is the good point, to recognize the point of peace, and small petty things should be ignored and forgiven. And this thing which has been mentioned in this verse, it should be clear that the word lagh, vain, that means a person by mistake, if he uses the foul language or with the intention of giving harm, he does something that it actually does not give any harm there. If some people are using foul languages or bad words, or the intention is this to give you some sort of a harm to other people, but there is actually no harm coming to you. So in that case, the indication of the peaceful attitude is that you just go away and ignore that thing. Even if somebody wants to give you a small injury or loss, so just forgive it and leave it alone, and your dignified attitude should be demonstrated. And then he says, and the person who with bad intention he uses foul language, so then you answer it in a dignified way of peace, and as a result of that, that enemy would become your close friend. Then he says in one place that in training and creating this community, the purpose is that the tongue and the ears and eyes and everything, there should be the light of righteousness in every faculty, and he should be a good moral of the good things, and unnecessary anger should not be there. He says that I have seen some people, that a majority of the people, they have this weakness of anger in them. On petty issues, they have the enmity and rancor against other people, and they start fighting. These people actually do not get any benefit from the community, and I can't understand that what difficulty is that if somebody abuses and the other person should keep quiet and does not give any reply to that. The reformation of each community, it begins with good morals. So it should be the case that you should make progress in this right way, and the best way for that is, and he said that the best way for doing it, that if somebody uses foul language, so you pray for them from the depth of your heart, Allah Almighty may reform him and never increase the elements of rancor and enmity. As the laws of the world are there, so similarly there are laws of God. When the world does not abandon their law, so then Allah Almighty, how is He going to leave His laws? So unless you bring about a change, until that time there is no value of you in the sight of God. Allah Almighty does not like this thing, that modesty and kindness and forgiveness and these qualities which are there, instead of that, vulgarity is there and harsh attitude is there. That is not right. So if you abandon these things and acquire the good qualities, you will reach to God Almighty very quickly. So our purpose is, by joining the community of the promised Messiah, and the purpose is to please God Almighty and to establish the real unity of Allah in our hearts. So then, as he has said, that for this purpose you have to adopt these morals which are related with the duties of fellow beings, which are required by discharging the rights of other people. On one occasion, giving the advice, he said that if you have established the link with me and you have made the claim of joining into my force, then you have to acquire the good morals. And disorder and the condition of that has to be abundant. And all those people who have the relationship with him, they are attached to him. He told all of them that they should purify their hearts, and their humanly kindness should be increased, and they should be kind to the kind people and spread the element of peace on the earth, because that will become the means of spreading your religion. When you spread the peace in the world, then that will result in the establishment of spreading of Islam, and that opens the way of tabligh. So get up and repent to Allah Almighty and please your Allah Almighty through good deeds, and then on one occasion, in order to take all these bad feelings from their heart and to be kind to the people and laying the foundation of peace among them, advising them, he says that at this time, to my community who believes me as the promised Messiah, I advise them in particular that they should always shun these impure habits. Allah Almighty has sent me as the promised Messiah, and He has given me the cloak of the Massih ibn Maryam. So I advise you that abandon the bad things and always be kind and discharge the rights towards fellow being, and discharge those rights. And your heart should be clean from rancor and enmity, because by that you will become like angels. And what impure there is that religion which does not have the kindness of mankind. And what is bad path is there which is filled with the thorns of enmity. So those people who are with me, you think that what is the purpose of religion? Is it this, that all the time you have to harm the interest of the people and you want to give some distrust to the people? No, not like that. Rather, the religion is to acquire that life which is by losing everything for the sake of God. And and all these things can only be acquired when you leave everything for the sake of God. Have mercy upon all the people for the sake of God if you have to acquire this pure life. And it will not be without any effort or without acquiring the good morals. He said, for the sake of Allah, have mercy upon all the people, so that mercy should descend upon you from heaven. Come, I teach you one way through which your light will be dominant over all other people. And all these bad enmities and anger and bad feelings, you abandon that and be kind to the mankind. And you can get the cleanliness of heart. And this is the way through which you get the miracles, and the prayers are accepted, and the angels descend to help you. But it is not a job of one day. Make progress, and learn the lesson from that washerman who first boils these clothes in the boiling water, and all the filth and all the filth that goes away, and then he gets in the morning, and then he goes out and dampen the clothes in the water and strikes it against the stones, and all that filth which has become the part of the clothes, and after this boiling and after this striking against the stone, all this filth goes away when the people wash these clothes like that. And the washerman, or nowadays the washing machine is there, they encircle the clothes very swiftly. So that is the example he has given, that all the filth goes away and the clothes become clean and clean as they were before. So as the clothes are cleansed, the same method is there to cleanse your body. And your salvation depends on this purity. And this is what Allah Almighty says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. That person is successful, the one who has been purified from all types of filth. So in this way, you have to wash up yourself, just like the example of the clothes has been given. Allah Almighty enable us that by acting upon His teaching, the teaching of the promised Messiah, we should be those people who show kindness to the people and lay the foundation of peace. And we understand the concept of unity of Allah, and also we are spreading a peace and harmony among the society. And the worldly desires should not overpower us, but the pleasure of Allah Almighty. In search of that, we should always be there, and this should always be our effort and doing.